Well, hello again. This is Go Ahead and Tell Me, and this is your host, Susan Douglas, and we're coming to you out of beautiful Santa Cruz. And so welcome to everyone. I'm really glad you're here. Today we have the privilege of spending time with Tenzin Chogkyi, a meditation teacher and compassion trainer whose life has been deeply devoted to understanding how we grow, not just as individuals, but as communities. Tenzin has practiced meditation for decades and spent nearly 20 years as a Buddhist monastic ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Her path has included years of teaching around the world, working in prisons, developing programs that support compassionate action, and offering practices that help people cultivate emotional balance, resilience, and genuine connection. What's especially inspiring about her work is her belief that transformation is possible at any age of life, that wisdom, compassion, and purpose can continue to deepen well into our later years, and that meaningful service is available to all of us. Welcome, Tenzin.
Thank you so much, and what a lovely introduction. Hopefully I can live up to all of that.
You certainly can. I know you can. So let's kind of start at the beginning. You began your meditation journey in the early 70s.
Yes.
Okay, so what drew you into that?
Yes, like many people of my generation, transcendental meditation was a big deal in the early 70s. And I was just looking for something that gave life a bit more meaning. I grew up in a home that I describe as rather scientific reductionist. Neither one of my parents were religious. They'd both been raised Protestant. Mm-hmm. We never went to church when I was growing up. I don't remember either one of my parents ever talking about God or anything transcendent. It was just about, you know, what you can experience with the five senses, the sort of post-war, you know, success in your career and having a family. And I just was looking for more. And so that was sort of in the ether during those days. There were posters of the Maharishi in every shopping center, and the Beatles were talking about meditation. And so that's sort of what drew me in.
And where were you living at that time?
I was living at that point. My dad was in the Navy, so we moved a lot. When I started meditating, we were living in suburban Washington, D.C. coast.
Ah, right. Okay. So from D.C., you started this meditation. So what were the most transformative lessons from your nearly 20 years as a monastic?
Yeah, it was such a deepening of practice for me. You know, my motivation, I actually decided to become a monastic in the third year of my first 3-year retreat. I did 2 3-year meditation retreats, which is a custom in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, something that's done. And I started my meditation retreats as a layperson, and then in the third year of my first retreat, decided to become a monastic. And the motivation was, I think in my deep practice, I was seeing how the Buddha had actually designed a lifestyle perfectly designed for simplicity and service. You know, that you could just focus your life on your meditation practice and on serving others without the distractions of, what do I look like? What do I do with my hair? Where do I live? Mm. And so that really appealed to me. I was realizing at that point, obviously at the third year of a 3-year retreat, that this was becoming much more of a focal point of my life, and that the monastic life would sort of enable me to really focus much more deeply and simplify my life to enable that focus.
Yeah, wonderful. So, I mean, you actually went to teaching in prisons with this, didn't you?
Yes. I taught as a monastic in prisons for about 15 years, as it turns out, and it was prisons in primarily North America, although for a number of years I was living in New Zealand and traveling a lot to Australia, so I had the opportunity to teach a lot in prisons in New Zealand and Australia as well. And one memorable occasion in a prison in Bogota, Colombia, when I was there, as a visiting teacher in a room full of about 200 incarcerated students in Bogota, Colombia, which was an amazing experience.
Wow, I mean, you need a lot of strength, and did it not instill any fear in you whatsoever?
Well, the first time I went, it was very interesting. I was invited by a friend of mine who is also a monastic, and she had been going into prisons just leading meditation, but the men wanted more philosophy. They wanted more teachings and not just sitting in meditation. And she said, I'm not a teacher. You're a teacher. Would you come in? I'll go with you. And I remember the first time I went in, just being curious if I would have any trepidation. It was just, how is this going to feel? Is this going to be hard? Is it going to be scary? I had really had no idea. So I went in curious and just checking and really trying to be aware. And I was just so blown away by the sincerity of the students and their eagerness, and also feeling like I had had this incredible opportunity to travel around the world receiving teachings, to go into long retreat. These were people who couldn't just get in their car and drive to the meditation center.
No.
And I felt like of all the privilege that I had and all the opportunities that I had a responsibility to, if I was willing to take in what I'd learned into that setting where they really didn't have any other, they were so eager for strategies, for managing their emotions, for developing their compassion. And it was just so inspiring to work with them. I devoted many, weeks, months driving to these prisons out in the Central Valley, spending the night in a Motel 6, going in the next day and teaching for many, until COVID began. And then that's when everything kind of shut down. Yeah. But it was so inspiring to me that after that first visit where, like I said, I was curious, I told my friend, I'll give it a try once and we'll see how it goes. I don't know. But I don't have a lot. I'm not easily intimidated, and I don't kind of live from a place of timidity and fear. I had a feeling I'd be okay, and it turned out to be so gratifying, like one of the most gratifying teaching experiences really that I've had in this life.
Right. And was there, a lot of diversity? Obviously, we're talking about different nations here. So was there a lot of diversity in the prisons at all?
Well, some of the prisons, it's very interesting because prison gangs are very much race-based. And in some prison groups, it was clear that it was only the Latino guys, only the white guys. And I tried to deal with that dynamic, but it's so baked into prison culture, especially in North America. I had a really interesting experience when I went to New Zealand to teach, and somebody had met this prison warden at a funeral or something, and she said, oh, my friend teaches in prison, and he invited us in. It's not usually how we would do it. We'd usually wait for there to be a Buddhist group that would invite us in as guest teachers. But anyway, it was different in New Zealand, and when we went in for the first time, the prison chaplain, this lovely Catholic chaplain, said, well, we couldn't put up the posters you gave us, and invite anybody because of the gangs can't mix. So we just picked the gang we thought would most benefit from meditation.
Oh, interesting.
So it wasn't diverse at all. It was one Maori gang who they had picked to join, and we had a great time. It was an incredible experience for me, and I learned so much from that experience. So it depended a little bit on the prison culture in terms of diversity. My last class that I did right before COVID, I did a compassion training, the Stanford Compassion Cultivation Training I was able to do in a prison in Soledad with a regular group that I met with. And it was primarily Latino, and there was a little bit of a thing that the white guys didn't feel welcome, and I tried to, kind of facilitate that, and it just sort of didn't work. So most of the guys in that last group were Latino.
Oh, that's great and very interesting to hear about the segregation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even your roommate, I had 2 students that were in a Buddhist class that wanted to be cellmates so they could meditate and support each other, but they were different racial groups, and the prison official policy wouldn't allow people of different racial groups to be cellmates. Right. So they couldn't live together and meditate all the time the way they wanted to. So yeah, it's really quite a feature, at least, of American prison culture, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Wow. But you were ordained with the Dalai Lama, weren't you?
Yes.
Please tell us about that one.
That was an extraordinary experience. So like I said, I decided to ordain in the third year of my first 3-year meditation retreat, and I wrote a letter to my teacher, because you need your teacher's permission. So my main teacher, and it was, I was in retreat in a year in the middle of the desert in Arizona, and so it was a snail mail letter, and I wrote this heartfelt, 5-page letter, I'm ready, I'm finally ready, not having any idea when I'd get an answer, because he traveled all the time to teach, and I was like, I might not hear back in 6 months, who knows. 2 weeks later, I got this letter, and it was just a couple of lines, and he goes, "Oh, I was just so happy to get your letter. It's the best thing to do is to go get ordained with the Dalai Lama in India, as soon as possible." So I made my arrangements for the next time to go. And it was one of the high points. I think there's days in your life, and that was one of them, where when I was coming home, I thought, okay, if I die right now, if I just get run over by some crazy taxi driver right this minute, it's okay. I've just done the most important thing.
Reached my peak.
And I'm quite tall, as some people know, and you go up to get ordained in these groups of 3. And my group happened to be, I'm over 6 feet tall, and my group happened to be a woman from Colombia who is about 5 feet tall, and a woman from Taiwan who is about 4'10" or something. So there's the 3 of us, and I'm in the middle. And we're walking up, and the Dalai Lama is looking at me and then he's looking at me with this puzzled look. And then as I walk up there, he goes, "What country do you come from?" Where do they grow people who look like you? And I'm like, okay, what? But it was just this moment of humor and connection with the Dalai Lama. And,
absolutely. I mean, when that happens, are you able to have conversations with him afterwards, or is it just a ceremony and that's it?
No, it's just a room full of people. It's just a ceremony. Like I say, you go up 3 by 3, and so that group was about 45 people who were all getting ordained in the same time.
Yeah. And what part of India is that?
It's northern India, in a place called Dharamsala, which is in northern India, where a lot of the Tibetan refugees settled in various places throughout India. And it's the foothills of the Himalayas in this beautiful place in northern India.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, where
beautiful.
There's a large Tibetan community who settled there. The Indian government kindly gave His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he escaped Tibet in 1959, and then gave him this residence, this beautiful residence to live in, and that's where he's been based pretty much since then.
Oh, right, okay. So did you stay within the premises, or do they accommodate you there?
My first meditation center, where I first discovered Tibetan Buddhism, was actually there, and that's where I was staying. It's a beautiful retreat center up there in the mountains, so that's where I was staying during that time.
Yeah, beautiful. Idyllic setting.
Yes.
I heard a story about the Dalai Lama coming here. Do you know this story? He came to the land of the medicine Buddha, I was told by somebody who came on the show earlier, actually. And it was out of the blue, and he arrived there, and it's the only place in America that he went. Then he went back to India. He blessed the land around, so the whole of Santa Cruz County, I suppose, and beyond. And this was 2 weeks before the big earthquake, because there'd been somebody predicting, some well-known clairvoyant, predicting that California would have a huge earthquake that would separate it from the mainland. But I don't know. This is the story. But she happened to be in the land of medicine Buddha when he was there. And so she repeated this story to me.
Before the earthquake was Vajrapani Institute, which is another Tibetan Buddhist center in Boulder Creek. I think that would have been, because he did do a really, right before he won the Nobel Prize, which was right before when the earthquake was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Land of Medicine Buddha. I think it was Vajrapani Institute in Boulder Creek. Yeah.
Or maybe she knew about it because she was actually training herself.
Maybe
the land of the medicine Buddha.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you think there's some
It was
truth to
apparently
that?
incredibly powerful. I wasn't there myself. That was before I actually moved to that center in Boulder Creek in 1992. So it was a couple of years before I moved there. But I heard lots of stories about when he came. Obviously, it was a really big deal. And they said it was right before he won the Nobel Prize. And they wouldn't have even been able to host him because then his popularity and just his name recognition just skyrocketed. And apparently at that event, there were about 600 people, and there was no way to keep it that small from that point on. Right. Yeah.
Well, I find that a fascinating story.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to go, to the active Buddhism, What does sustainable service mean, especially for people who are worried about burnout?
That's a great question. And sustainable service is actually a program that I developed that I'm piloting right now at the invitation of a Buddhist center in Sacramento, where I've been going to teach actually for nearly 20 years as a guest. The main teacher there, Lama Jimpa, is a good friend of mine. And he really focuses on compassion in action for his students. And he has a group of people doing compassionate action either as a job in healthcare, education, and so forth, or as volunteers, or as caregivers of a loved one, so many ways of doing it. And so he and I were discussing a couple of years ago, and I said, there's so many pieces and strategies to help us maintain our compassionate action without burning out. And so we developed this program that we called Sustainable Service. And it has pieces like setting boundaries compassionately. Because one of the things that often happens, and I'm a survivor of this attitude, is, I need to do whatever will help at all times and not think about myself at all. So how do we set boundaries and maybe do something that somebody wants me to do that isn't actually beneficial for them? Right. And so in Buddhism, we often give the sort of metaphor that compassion and wisdom are like two wings of a bird, and the bird needs both wings to fly, that we need to be compassionate, but we need to be wise about our compassion. Right. And not just be a doormat and let people abuse us, certainly, and not just do what people want because it may not be the right thing for them. So we discuss that. There's a whole module on compassionate boundaries. There's a whole module on balancing our empathy. Empathy is a prerequisite to compassion, the way we teach it in the Stanford program. There's a module on investigating our motivation and our intention. Is helping others really about us feeling worthwhile and really just about our role in the world and feeling like we have some job, or is it really motivated by the wish to help others and really attuning to others' needs and so forth? One of the trainings that I teach is called Cultivating Emotional Balance. So we have a whole module on, how do we manage our own emotional life and how do we manage our own emotions and bringing awareness to our emotional life so we can create choice instead of just being reactive, which is really important. There's a module on conflict management skills. How do we manage conflicts appropriately when they arise in these situations? So we've tried to put together a program with 8 individual modules of very pragmatic skills to support people trying to be of service in the world, because we often have this beautiful motivation to be of service, but don't really learn skills and strategies to make it sustainable. Right. So that's the goal of that program, and it's been very well received, and I always really enjoy going up there and working with that group.
So people have to actually come to the group. You don't do anything online with that?
That one is in person only, mostly because it's based at that one Buddhist center where everybody, is able to kind of come in person. And also because it's very workshop style. It's nice to be in person now that we can. It's far enough, away from COVID. Although, as I said, it's the first time I'm rolling it out, and it might be possible to do a more open online-only session where anybody could come, not necessarily connected with a specific Buddhist center. This is just how I'm kind of piloting and rolling out the program.
Right. Great.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get lots of takers on that
Thank
subject.
you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And how can small acts of compassion create meaningful cultural change, in your opinion?
Yes. I think, I find this not only with myself, but a lot of students too, when they're inspired to become more kind and more compassionate, and they're inspired to live lives of service, they often think it needs to be huge, like start another 501c3 nonprofit, save all the refugees, do the thing. And all of that is great. And I think we often overlook and minimize the impact of just paying attention to what's in front of us and showing up with kindness and compassion in every moment, with every interaction that we have. And I really believe that has a huge impact too. The ripple effect of that, we are impacting others whether we choose to or not by how we show up, the words we say, the attitude we have, just the energy we bring to every interaction. We're impacting others whether we choose to or not. And we don't even know the impact on others and the ripple effect. We might be able to just say a kind word to someone, and then that inspires them because of the way that they feel that we've just shown up with kindness and care and a moment of attention.
That's true.
To then do that to others. And then the impact, it's like the metaphor of the drops filling the bucket. Like it's just a drop, but that's how a bucket gets filled.
Yes.
So I think that attention to every moment and every interaction and bringing that mindfulness, just our good old-fashioned mindfulness practice, just bringing that mindfulness. I've started a new practice this year of just trying to kind of keep track of all the ways that I try and be kind to people in a day, and just trying to kind of flavor my day with small acts of kindness. It makes me feel so much better at the end of the day. I don't know what the impact is. Is it going to create world peace? I don't know about that. But I know it creates peace in my own immediate environment. And I think all of us doing that is the way for these much more dramatic cultural shifts to happen.
Yeah, I wish a lot more people practice it that way, I can tell you that.
And I think, one thing to mention right now, because there's so much division in our country and so many things that are making us upset and angry, to also bring that kindness to our opposition too, and not show up and feel like it's a zero-sum game and we need to be just as nasty and blaming and shaming as the so-called other side for those of us that are more progressive in our politics. And I think it's really important to hold the integrity. I was so inspired. I'm a big fan of Bad Bunny and his halftime show. Yeah. And then at the end, he had this beautiful, huge billboard that said, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." And if we can lead with love, we might be upset at what's happening, but never lose sight of the fact that we can lead with love and kindness. And he's right. That really is the only thing that's going to overcome some of the really vitriolic rhetoric that we're seeing, but we don't need to match it. No. We don't need to match it just because we're opposed to what's happening. And I think that's so important to keep.
Yes, I know. Yes, it was quite a show.
Yes,
I thought it was amazing. So the people that are feeling overwhelmed by all these big global issues, where can they begin to settle?
Yeah. And I think the huge thing that is easy for us to overlook is connection with others, supportive connection with others. Often I think in the U.S., our culture is so hyper-individualistic that we kind of keep thinking we need to, even to meditate, we need to go off into a room and close the door and sit down on our own. To regulate, we need to go for a walk by ourselves. We need to read a book by ourselves. We might need to do all of that. But what I find for me really helps is to feel loving connection with people who share my values. And that's so resourcing for me. And it really helps me feel a sense of resilience of like, I'm not alone. I actually had a phone call the other day from a friend who's a Latin American immigrant, and he just wanted some support because he felt so scared at what's happening right now. And he had spent the entire weekend at home feeling scared to go out of his house because of ICE presence in the area where he lived.
Yeah.
And I just kept saying to him, you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm here. There's so many other people supporting you. I know you're scared right now. I know you feel so isolated, but you're not alone. So I think seeking out, like when we're feeling overwhelmed, it's not going to make it worse to be with other people who are feeling the same way. It'll actually make us all feel better. You know, sometimes we're just like the cat that crawls under the porch, when it's sick or something. And to really just, even the tiniest connection, but especially with people that really care for us and share our values. I find nothing more resourcing. And all of the research, supports that too, all the positive psychology research. The number one thing that people recommend for a happier life is social connection. And I think especially when times are tough, we need to reach out more, even when we don't feel like it. And it really, really will help. And then working for change with others feels so much better. We don't have to do that alone. If you are inspired for some sort of activism or, social change, doing it with others will help everyone be able to make it through these challenging times with resilience.
Yeah.
And joy, not forgetting the joy. Yeah. And not feeling like feeling joy and having those moments for joy is somehow disloyal to the suffering that we're seeing all around us. That's really important too, to allow ourselves to feel the joy.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your teaching, is there one story or a few stories that stand out where you've just seen the change of the impact of your way you live, the way you teach?
Yeah. I had a story actually two stories that come from incarcerated students that make me feel like, okay, all of those years driving into the hot Central Valley was worth it. And one student wrote me a letter after the compassion training, and he wrote this beautiful letter, and he had been gang involved and was in prison for a homicide, a gang-related homicide. And he was talking about how, like, in the past, he'd always struggled with anger, his whole life. And he said, in the past, when the anger would overcome me, sometimes I'd have my homies, like, holding me back. And he said, now I've got 3 homies holding me back, and it's mindfulness, compassion, and awareness. And I thought, oh, my God, that's incredible. He was being like, when... Now it's these are the powers holding me back, not my strong friends, holding me back from getting into a fight, but my own mindfulness and compassion and awareness. And I thought that was so beautiful that he had internalized these qualities. And so when he noticed, because we all have all of the emotions, including anger, it's not that it's not going to arise, but can we somehow transform it so it doesn't kind of blow up in a reactive episode that's going to be destructive. And also in the compassion training, I had another student who, there was somebody, and he lived in, the prisons in California were so overcrowded before COVID. And a lot of times they'd live in these dorms made out of the gym that would have like 350 guys in these bunks, just these terrible conditions. And there was another incarcerated person who was, we didn't know, is it trauma or autism spectrum or whatever, but he kind of was nonverbal and wouldn't really make eye contact with anyone else. So, of course, he got bullied a lot and marginalized a lot. So through the compassion training, my student, who ended up having a job in the kitchen, would bring this guy food, like started tuning into this guy and going, he's a human being. He needs compassion. He needs friendship. So my students started bringing him food from the kitchen from his job. And he said at first this other man would just grab it almost like a hungry dog, like not even thank him or make eye contact, but just grab the food and take it to his bunk and eat. Right. And then he said, oh, I wonder if there's a way I could interact with him. And he decided, if we play cards, he doesn't have to talk to me or look at me. And so he invited this guy to play cards. So they started having these card games. And then all of the other guys in this 350, room dorm of the gym, because my student had a lot of street cred. He was pretty powerful. And then they started leaving this guy alone because suddenly he'd been befriended by the guy who was pretty alpha in the prison.
Right.
So it was just incredible. And it was just through the compassion training, it prompted him to look outside his own self-concern and go, who needs help in my, who has a need in my environment? And then so creatively figuring out a way to interact with this person different from the way he would have maybe chosen to, but appropriate to what this person's capacity was.
Right, yeah.
So
brilliant.
I just thought those two stories were so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you won the Outstanding Woman in Buddhism in 2023.
Yes.
Do tell us about that.
That was a great honor.
Yeah.
That was a great honor. I was it's a group of that has been, I think it's been 20 or 25 years they've been giving this award on a yearly basis to a group of women, and you're nominated by one of the previous awardees. And so one of my friends had gotten the award, I think about 5 years prior to that, and she nominated me. And so it's a whole process that they, look at what you're doing in the world, and they interview you and, decide amongst all of the candidates. And so that was a huge honor. It was during COVID, so they had a ceremony in Thailand that I was invited to join virtually, just because they decided to make it, as much as possible apart from the local people in Thailand. So that was a great honor too. And I have this beautiful shiny plaque that they mailed me from Thailand.
Great.
But it was really in honor of, which was so kind, in honor of kind of my Buddhism in action and just my commitment to social justice issues and really bringing the Buddhist ideas off the cushion and trying to make a better world now, not just, eventually we'll all be enlightened, but really to try and kind of use some of the strategies of Buddhism to try and make a better world. And in that, I'm really inspired by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who has, a real mandate to create programs using Buddhist contemplative techniques for everyone, whether they're interested in Buddhism or not. So taking these techniques and presenting them in a secular way that's appropriate for everyone. And the compassion training is one of those, and the cultivating emotional balance is another program, both of which were specifically requested by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to be developed on the basis of Buddhist ideas. But he said, don't make it Buddhist, don't talk about karma, don't talk about rebirth, don't talk about enlightenment, just use these skills and strategies. So that's been a real focus of my teaching more and more, especially the last 10 years or so, is, how do we make these strategies available to everyone? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Just as a way of life rather than as a religion.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, exactly. Because that's the point. I mean, the Buddha just wanted us to suffer less. He didn't care what we believed in. The whole point of Buddhism is how can we experience less dissatisfaction, starting with our own minds and transforming our own minds. And that's the whole point. So there's so many beautiful ways to do that, no matter what religious tradition or none that people, kind of identify with.
Right. Now, you volunteer at the Second Harvest Food Bank, don't you?
I do. That's a new thing I started doing about a year and a half ago, and I love doing that so much.
I mean, are you able to kind of help people emotionally as well as pack food?
Well, you get into conversations with the people near you sometimes, for sure. And also many of us who are volunteers, who are regular volunteers, have gotten to know each other. And I really just try and bring, one of the great things about the packing at the warehouse in Watsonville for the food bank, which is the main volunteer job I do. They do so many, they have distribution sites all over, is that the volunteer coordinator and the warehouse manager there always keeps everything so upbeat and so much fun. So you wouldn't think that standing on your feet for 3 hours putting onions, potatoes, and apples in a bag would be fun, but he always makes it fun. So it's a really nice, place to volunteer. And sometimes I will be next to somebody who will be going through something, so you can kind of have a chat.
Yeah, so the dual aspect is very good.
Yeah, and for me, in my teaching, I do feel like it's beneficial, but it's more ephemeral. It's not so tangible. And so there is something for me about balancing, putting vegetables in a bag that I know somebody's going to be able to make soup for their family with that tomorrow. That feels really good, like the tangible benefits. So I try and kind of cover the spectrum from the more intangible benefits that I may not even see to the very tangible ones.
Right.
And I find that just makes life more satisfying. And
so if there's somebody who's retired recently, what would you say that like first gentle steps into kind of community service, if that's what they're wanting?
Yeah. I think doing that is such a great thing, because I think two of the things that are so important for our happiness that often people lose when they retire is the feeling of community and the feeling of meaning. And that's what creates such a hole. We can often, when we're getting ready to retire, think, oh, great, I'm going to have all this free time. It's so wonderful. And we don't really realize that we're losing that daily connection with other people and something that makes life meaningful. So I think getting those needs met. And I think it's important to know that we can experiment and you don't have to pick something that's perfect for you and stick with it. You can try different things. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Try something else. But try and think of something that's going to keep you connected to other people and fulfill what you feel is meaningful. And ideally, use the skill that you already have. All of these nonprofits and with all the budget cuts and things, so many retired people have these incredible skill sets that could be used on a volunteer basis. The local volunteer center has mentors that can talk to you and kind of match you with an appropriate thing. So I think it's changing our idea of what happiness is. For most of us, just enjoying ourselves and having unlimited free time to read books and go for walks on the beach just isn't enough. We still need something to make our life meaningful. That's such a core human need, no matter what our age. And it may be, I notice my stamina not being as much as it used to. I can't work 8 hours a day anymore. Sometimes they ask me, can I come do the afternoon shift after doing the morning shift at the food bank? And I'm like, I just can't. It's exhausting.
Right.
So being aware of that, obviously also too, but there's so many ways that we can continue to make a difference, and I think it's that idea of just feeling like you're put out to pasture and you're not doing anything meaningful anymore, that we don't think through enough that that's a really as core of a need for us as anything else is rest and health and food, to be honest. Yeah.
So how do you think life experience, including mistakes, becomes a source of compassion and leadership for the people who have retired?
What a great question. Well, I notice in my older age, just having more generosity and grace and patience, because I've made phenomenal numbers, just about every mistake in the book. So I notice myself becoming less judgmental and more gracious with others. And I think we can just extend more empathy. Like, how many experiences when you're older have you not had? Mostly you can relate to almost everything anybody has gone through. And I think we underestimate how powerful empathic listening is as a gift to others too. And that's something I think that we can do so much that also makes us feel so worthwhile is just listening to people. We don't even have to give them the advice of our long experience, but we can just say, oh yeah, I hear you and I get it and I've been through it. And, just to feel heard. And I think that's one of the gifts of being older, is just that experience and the empathy and just the more kind of patience and generosity and less judgment, because we've been through it all ourselves.
So, I mean, some people, they still have fear, they have doubt.
Yes.
And so how would you work with that if you know that that's happening to you, or you might have physical limitation? How do they become engaged when they're dealing with that?
Well, there's a group of people that comes to the food bank every second Wednesday, and it's a group of older women that all go together. And there's 4 of them, and every second Wednesday they come together. So do it with a friend. So if it feels scary to put yourself out there, you can always just get a friend to do it with you, or to do it even the first couple of times with you until you feel comfortable in the new situation. We all have that. We all have discomfort with novelty, even though it's exciting, but it's scary. And will they like me? And will I know what to do? So get a buddy. Do it with the buddy system. I think we overlook that too. And I love this group of women that come, and they're just, and it's their way of getting together and doing something meaningful together. And it sort of multiplies. I think it's kind of exponential. I mean, I think we do something alone, it feels really good. You do it with one other friend, it's 4 times as good.
Yeah.
Do it with 2 other friends, it's 9 times as good. I think it really is kind of exponential what we share with others. And then you can kind of savor it together and reflect on it and go, oh, remember when we did that thing? That was so fun and that was so meaningful.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Just share it with a friend. It makes a big difference, I know.
And they may just be wanting something meaningful to do, and then you suggest it, and it may give them the gift of like, oh, I never would have thought of that. That sounds fun. Let's do that together.
Right, exactly. And then you have a service, don't you, on Sundays, every other Sunday?
Yes.
Please talk about that.
Thank you. So I have an ongoing drop-in class, and it's at Insight Santa Cruz, which is a Buddhist center kind of right behind Mobo Sushi, right in downtown Santa Cruz. And so it's the first and third Sunday at 5 to 6:30. And so the whole, the title of that class is sort of the title of my website and the title of what I do. It's called Unlocking True Happiness. So what I do is kind of bring in sort of a mixture of Buddhist ideas with positive psychology, with just kind of coping with the ongoing situation. I remember last year doing a lot of sessions on hope, things like forgiveness, gratitude, different topics. It's one-off, and so you don't need to commit to the whole series at all. Some people are regulars, some people come just when they can, so each session is standalone. I usually start by talking about the topic for about 20 minutes or so, and then leading people through a guided contemplation where they apply some of the ideas to their own lives. Then we break up into small groups for about 10 minutes of discussion, just kind of sharing what came up for us or what questions we might still have or how we're still grappling with whatever the topic is. And then we come back to the bigger group for just a debrief and some sharing of the reflections for about 15 minutes. So the whole session is 90 minutes and kind of divided into, I'm a big believer in different ways of engaging with material. For adults, just being lectured at endlessly just doesn't work. We just, 15 or 20 minutes is about the maximum we can pay attention.
Right.
So leading people through some way of engaging with the material also on their own and really applying it to their own experience. And then my hope is that they have a takeaway at the end of 90 minutes, some way of dealing with their life with a new skill or a new strategy. So I really try and keep the sessions as practical as possible. I mean, they're based often on Buddhist principles and Buddhist ideas, but I just try and move as quickly as possible to some sort of application and skill building. So those are fun, and I have a regular group, people who, that's kind of their thing, and they come whenever they can on Sundays, and then it's just open for anybody who wants to just come and check it out.
But you also have it on Zoom.
Yes, it's hybrid. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hybrid. That's one thing that people are there in person, and then they can also, so I have people checking in from all over the world on the Zoom screen. There's Canadians, sometimes there's Australians, people from New Zealand.
Really?
One
Yeah.
woman from Glasgow opts in at like 3 o'clock in the morning or
Wow.
something in
Yeah,
Glasgow
it would
from
be.
time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's possible to get the link on the Insight Santa Cruz website. There's a calendar. So it's listed on the first and third Sundays as Unlocking True Happiness. So all the information to join is on the Insight Santa Cruz calendar page.
Right, okay. Yeah, and on your website you have a lot of guidance to Unlocking True Happiness.
Yeah, that's right. So unlockingtruehappiness.org is my website, and there's a big archive of previous teachings and recordings. There's also a podcast. I used to have a radio show on K-Squid, the local radio station. So the archived episodes of the radio show are on there. So there's a lot of, in fact, I met someone last week, total stranger, came up to me and said, "Oh, I've listened to all your podcasts. I love your teachings." And I'm like, okay, I don't even remember that stuff is out there. I'm so glad it helped you, you know. And so she had discovered it somehow and kind of had listened to a lot of the episodes. And so there's a lot of material there.
Yeah.
No paywall, no need to ever,
Yes, okay, great. Yeah, but I've lost your sound a little bit there, but...
sorry.
Yeah. Right, and the people on Zoom, now, when everybody else gathers together for reflection amongst themselves, what do the people on Zoom do?
So I put people into breakout rooms on Zoom. So I set up breakout rooms for the same time for the people on Zoom. So they'll go into a little room of 3 or 4 people, and then we come back for the bigger reflection, and I ask both the people on Zoom and the people in the room to share, so that there's a big screen on the wall so that people can see everybody who's on Zoom, and the sound is turned up so they can ask questions and share kind of equal to the people in the physical room as well.
Right, okay. And they could be talking from different countries.
That's right.
Oh,
and often are.
That's awesome.
Yes, I know. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, some student from New Zealand, when I lived there 15 years ago, will pop in and I'll be, "Oh my gosh, it's you again. It's so great to see you."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So people can come to that. They can look at your website, and they can attend different classes that you hold.
Yes.
Yes. And the one in Stanford you've spoken about, are there any others?
So just keep checking the website. I also have a e-news that comes out usually every 2 weeks, and they can sign up on that unlockingtruehappiness.org website. There's a sign up on all of the pages, and it's a MailChimp e-news. It comes out just announcing the upcoming classes. So there's always things kind of being rolled out and being scheduled. And so that's kind of the best way to keep updated, is just to sign up with that. So it's really just one email every 2 weeks. I don't spam you. You're not going to be getting something in your inbox every day. It is email, so people need to kind of be aware of email. I know nowadays people mostly communicate in other ways, Instagram, DMs, and all these other ways, so it's the old-fashioned email. Yeah. But that's actually the best way to kind of keep in touch with the ongoing schedule and get announcements about what's coming up.
Right, okay. Okay, so in this crazy world of ours right now,
yes,
what gives you the most hope?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love the idea that hope is kind of a verb, not necessarily a noun. One Buddhist principle that gives me a lot of hope is the principle of impermanence, and that means that things are always changing. Because I think the way things are right now can feel so monolithic, and so there's powers that feel so far out of our control. Yep. But I think to kind of circle back to the way we started this hour together, to think about just those small acts, and many, many people doing what seems like small acts of kindness, of compassion, of resistance, of supporting the most vulnerable people in our communities does make a difference. So never overlooking an opportunity, no matter how small it feels, because those are the drops that fill the bucket, you know, and just trusting in that. Like, I really kind of trust in that as a principle. And there's times that I get discouraged too. I'm certainly not beyond fear and discouragement, but reminding myself of that and thinking of times I've seen it in action. And in my life, you know, there's so many stories. I mean, I think of Mahatma Gandhi, you know, one man in a loincloth against the British Empire to free India.
Yeah.
Through nonviolence and sticking to that principle of nonviolence. And it worked. It took decades, but it worked. Reverend Dr. King and all the great civil rights heroes, same thing. People who felt so oppressed and so marginalized and completely were, and taking that same principle. And it's like Mahatma Gandhi talked about satyagraha, the power of the truth, you know. And so I think of things that have changed in my time. I think of, you know, marching in the 80s and boycotting all these companies because of apartheid in South Africa. And then I got to hear Nelson Mandela at the Oakland Coliseum when he was freed from prison after all those decades, and then later became president of South Africa.
Yeah.
None of us, when we were marching in the 80s, would have foreseen that outcome.
No, I mean,
so I can think
amazing.
of things that even have happened in my lifetime that give me hope, and remembering, yes, that's
change.
Also, you know, examples, real clear examples of how change happens. But again, in community, together, and holding to those principles and in integrity with the principles of love and inclusion and compassion. I think so much of the conversation right now we're having nationally is about who belongs. And can we all be committed to creating a society where everyone belongs? That's where I want to live, you know, and not leaving anyone out, and really holding that principle and keeping to that and leading with love.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. The Beatles used to sing about it.
Yes.
All you need is love. And they were right.
They were not wrong.
So if you could offer one piece of wisdom to someone beginning a new chapter at a later age, what is the one thing that you would say, do that?
Yes. You know, what comes up for me is I think curiosity is a really underappreciated value,
right?
You know, and quality. And so we're never too old to keep curious. So staying curious, keep on experimenting, stay curious about how you are, let go of fixed ideas. Just because you were something or fulfilled some role for decades doesn't mean that there can't be a new chapter ahead of you. And if we can go to it, yes, there will be fear and trepidation, but if we can lead with curiosity, you know, and think, wow, what's next? What's possible? We don't know for how long, but, you know, leading with that attitude rather than going, oh no, you know, all of these things are falling away, but it's just opening up space for what's next. And so keeping that curious mind.
That's a very good reason to keep curious.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So before we close, I'd like to invite everyone to take a quiet moment who's listening and reflect on what has touched you today. Perhaps it's an idea, a practice, or a reminder that it's never too late to grow, to serve, and to deepen compassion for ourselves and for others. And I would like to thank Tenzin so much for being here today. I hope people have really gleaned some wisdom from
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I feel so inspired by the conversation we've had and feel really grateful for your invitation. Thank you.
And thank you. All right. Goodbye, everybody.